the members of the public will still have the opportunity to hit that button on engage and comment on the Grizzly Bear Advisory Council page. So they can submit their comments to us directly. And at the end of the day, we can check in to see what kind of additional feedback we're getting from members of the public. So they can otherwise, in terms of how this works, we're probably going to have to just be really patient with each other and break in if you need to. If you go to the bottom of your screen where it says participants and click on that button, it gives you the option to raise your hand down there or lower your hand. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to see those all the time because it's such a large list of people, but that's one opportunity to signal that you want to speak. Otherwise, I think we're going to just have to go through and do a lot of, we'll start with a roundtable discussion, just checking in with everyone, and then we'll go to some small group discussions, getting updates from each of the small groups. So we'll ask for a representative from each small group, and then we'll just try to engage in conversation as much as possible. Other than that, I think just patience and understanding as we try to work through this, and we'll probably get better at it as we go.
Hey,
if you aren't talking, it's probably a good idea to be on mute. Yep.
You are now on YouTube.
Thanks, Pat.
No.
So welcome everyone. We are live now on YouTube. Welcome members of the Grizzly Bear Advisory Council, members of the public, to this meeting of the Grizzly Bear Advisory Council. This is a quick transition from what we'd hoped to be an in-person meeting in both Browning and Choteau this week, but thanks to all of our technology assistants from FWP and just the understanding of the council members to transition this to an online format, this is where we are. Did want to just note for those of you that are listening in online that you can view this on the Grizzly Bear Advisory Council website at fwp.mt.gov/gbac, so gbac, and that as always, there is a quote unquote engage and comment button about a third of the way down that page for you to click and share any comments that you might have with the council. The council members can view those comments directly, and I know they do check them regularly. So if you'd like to submit a comment, please go ahead and do so. And I think in terms of the kind of comments that you submit, if you could be thinking about the different directives that the governor has outlined for the council in the executive order, that's really helpful. So around grizzly bear distribution, connectivity between ecosystems, conflict prevention, conflict response and protocols, the role of hunting, resourcing, and then what we're now calling moving bears, but is really about transplant and relocation of bears. So with that, I just want to give a quick overview of our agenda for this morning, and then we'll get started. So we wanted to just start by sharing a little bit more about some of the adjustments we're making and have a quick conversation around how we want to continue to advance this work in the face of this current public health emergency, the outbreak of COVID-19, and how we're all responding to that in real time. And then I want to give each member of the council an opportunity to say hi, to introduce themselves, as we always do at the start of these, and to share any reflections they have about any recent progress that they've made, additional thoughts and reflections based on their work as we've been continuing to move forward. We are going to also give folks time after that quick round of introductions to engage in a conversation with their working groups on the progress that they've made. So for those of you that are just plugging in for the first time, following our Libby meeting last month, the council members have been working on a preliminary framework of ideas and suggestions that will help frame their ultimate recommendations to the governor. So we'll hear about those. And then we're going to take a break around 11 this morning. The council members will then come back this afternoon for some small group discussions to continue their work. That piece of it, because they're going to be working in small groups in different online platforms, we're not making that piece available to the public. There are just too many different moving pieces. But then again, tomorrow at 9 a.m. again, we'll use this same format and welcome people back for another couple of hours of conversation and interaction with members of the council. Tomorrow is a chance for us to then continue the conversation around what the small groups are doing and to really figure out how we can continue to advance our work in light of some of the recent challenges, but also trying to address our ongoing concerns around let's make sure we have all the information inputs that we need, and we're continuing to make progress and just staying in touch with one another. I'll stop there and check in with Charlie and Heather. Am I missing anything in terms of logistics or an overview?
Sounded good to me. And Michelle did just join, so we've got her. Hi, Michelle.
Oh, good.
Hi there. Greetings from Ohio.
That sounds
Awesome.
good,
Thanks
Sean.
for joining, Michelle. Okay. And how are we doing on audio? Can everyone hear okay?
Coming through pretty clear for me.
Sounds good to me.
Me too.
Great. Thanks, guys. So just break in if ever it gets choppy or you can't hear anything. So obviously, this is a different world than it was just 3 weeks ago when we were all in Libby, and it was funny reminiscing with Heather a little bit about how she was spraying down the microphone there at that last meeting, thinking about how even then we were worried about passing the microphone and how we wanted to keep each other safe from one another's germs as we were coming across or coming from different places across the state. I think now more than ever, we're just really aware of how important it is for all of us to be a part of the solution to the challenges we're facing. And so thanks to the council members for making this quick adjustment. I know it's not ideal. I know a lot of us were really looking forward to some time together in person and especially seeing a little bit of the landscape. We hope to still provide those opportunities moving forward, and certainly we'll be keeping in touch with the governor's office and our public health officials to advance this conversation in a way that both informs us, but keeps everyone safe and actually contributes to the solution that we're all looking for. So just wanted to acknowledge that. Also, along those lines, because of these adjustments, we are very grateful for council members plugging in online in their homes. Just because of that, to recognize and be aware that if people are on their video or showing themselves in their homes, that they are inviting us into their homes. And so thank you for that, or in the post office or wherever they might be. I know, Trina, you're making some really specific sacrifices to be with us and to plug in. That also may mean that cats, dogs, kids, and all those things are involved. So just, we recognize that, and we thank you for working through all of that at the same time. Also, it's not ideal for public engagement. That's been a critical part of our work so far. We really enjoyed getting to know the communities that we visited and engaging with people in those towns and on the issues that they care a lot about. We want to continue to have those conversations. We're going to try to do it online as we are today via the live streaming of our council meeting, as well as the online portal. We'll continue to think about ways to improve those opportunities moving forward too. But thank you so much to members of the public that are listening in and being a part of this conversation. We really appreciate it. So with that, I'm going to just check in with everyone and have you, as we usually do at the start of these, introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and then any thoughts or comments you want to share just briefly, maybe 60 seconds or so, before we go into our round robin discussion that's going to be more focused on your individual work plans. So I'm just going to go down the list of members that I have that happens to be alphabetical by first name. So Annie, do you want to say hello?
Yep. Good morning, and thank you all. I'm in East Glacier, and it's snowing right now, and you are in my kitchen as I turn the video on. So thank you for bearing with. It's a little dirty right now. Also, thank you all for being willing to do this via Zoom and not coming to Browning during this heightened coronavirus time. Our community is really, the world is really fragile right now, and especially the Indian nations. We have a lot of different students and housing different needs. And so I do hope we get to have a field trip to this area. It's a wonderful spot to get to see and to learn about the human bear interactions. But thank you so much for understanding and not coming here at this time. It just means a lot. There's a lot of worry around the community. So thank you. Since the last meeting, it feels really good to get the Excel sheet out of our lives and move into Word documents. And it's exciting to see that we're all kind of consolidating our ideas and getting there. And so I'm excited to move forward this afternoon and this morning to get to see how that went for everybody and get a visual of that and just kind of keep moving it to a shortened, someday 2 or 3 page document.
Awesome. Thank you, Annie. Brett, do you want to say hi? Brett, are you on mute? Looks like Brett, you're on mute if you can hear me. All right, we'll try to circle back and get Brett. Caroline, do you want to say hi?
Hey, everyone. I don't even know how to start. I'm so glad we're doing this. I think this is the best we can do, and I'm really happy that we have the technology and you guys pulled it together so quickly. I feel especially a loss because I missed the Libby meeting, so I'm so sorry about that. And as many of you know, I'm in a new circumstance. I have ended my time with Greater Yellowstone Coalition as executive director, and am now self-employed. So you're in my office. That's an exciting change, and all good, very, super positive on all accounts, which gives me a little more time to work on stuff, which is also great. And just a reminder that what I've been thinking about, even though it's full on winter here in Bozeman, is that the bears, if they haven't emerged, are emerging soon. And probably some of the males are already out. And so it's going to be interesting as we proceed as bears re-enter our lives in real time. So thanks. It's great to chat with you all, and I look forward to being together at some point in the future again.
Thank you, Caroline. And just a reminder that if you're not speaking, it's probably best practice to have yourself on mute. I think we're getting a little bit of background noise in between people. Brett, can you hear me now? Brett, are you there? I can see you now.
Yeah, we had an internet, or we had a power went out, so sorry about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're just doing some introductions. Do you want to say hi and anything that's on your mind?
Hi, from wonderful snowy Montana, in the foothills of the Bighorns. It's glad to be here today for sure. So, thanks.
Great, thanks, Brett. Chad? Chad, looks like you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yep, there you are.
Thank you for putting this together, and thanks everybody for being very flexible with your schedules and putting the show, as they say, the show must go on. I think everything, I'm really excited to hear what everybody has to say, and looking through the documents, it looks like it's going to be a busy couple of hours on the phone the next few days. I will apologize in advance. I may be bouncing in and out of calls due to the nature of my business, and with us being an essential service, we're having a lot of conference calls and things going on with the state and local governments in regards to garbage being picked up and when it's going to be picked up and what we're doing for our contingency plans. And right now it's business as usual. Our guys are going to work every day. We are doing everything we can to keep them safe and protected, but there's a lot of worry out there. And so if I'm gone for a half hour or so, I apologize.
Yeah, totally understood, Chad. And I think the same goes for everyone, understanding we're trying to juggle a lot of different things right now. Just a quick reminder for people, this may be the first time some people are plugging into the council's work. So if you want to just quickly introduce yourself and your affiliation or where you live, I think that is helpful. So so Brett Barney, you're Sunlight Ranch Company, and this is Chad Bauer with Republic Services and lives in Missoula. So I think just a little bit more about who you are would be helpful for people at the beginning. And then whatever you want to share about what's on your mind or just any opening thoughts, that'd be great. So Chuck, you're next up.
Good morning. Actually still a beautiful morning in Columbia Falls. I am the manager of Stoltz Land and Lumber in the Flathead Valley. We are still working. We're doing everything we can to both employ and protect our employees. It's a little bit trying. And I too will ask for forgiveness like Chad and probably some of the others. I have a lot of sensitive personnel issues going on with employees, so I may have to take into account those and be gone from the call for a while, but glad we're trying to keep carrying on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Darren?
Hey, welcome everybody. Good morning from snowy Montana Havre. It's pretty snowy up here this morning. Darren Boss, I work for Montana State University, but representing myself on the council. I'm glad we're moving forward. I would not have been able to participate without a Zoom meeting this week under my current situations, and appreciate everybody making the efforts. I also may have to jump in and out. The university situation is changing, not just hourly, almost by every 5 minutes. So we're reacting and trying to take care of students and employees as much as possibly can, plus going online with all teaching. So thanks everybody. I thought the small groups worked really hard this past 3 weeks. So good to see what everybody else is doing. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Darren. Aaron.
Hi, everyone. This is Erin Edge out of Missoula, Montana, and I work with Defenders of Wildlife. Yeah, I just want to say thank you, first of all, to everyone to keep going. I really appreciate that this is super challenging, but I really appreciate that we're going to keep moving the ball forward. And I also want to say thank you to everybody out there, too, that does not have the ability to work from home. So thank you for continuing some of those services, Chad, to your folks and to other folks in the medical industry and things. I think this is challenging for everybody, but I appreciate all of us getting together on this call and then look forward to kind of seeing how we move forward from here. I think we're kind of in this situation potentially for quite some time. So thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. So Greg Schock is also a council member. He wasn't able to join us this morning. He comes to us from St. Ignatius, Montana, and has been a dairy farmer there. So just wanted to acknowledge that Greg wasn't able to join us, but he has been contributing to the small group conversations, and we'll keep him updated as we move forward. Heath?
Yeah, good morning. My name's Heath Martinell. I'm a rancher in Southwest Montana, and it's been pretty nice here, I guess, the last couple of weeks. A lot of our snow's gone off, and hope that we do have a chance to reschedule those meetings. I was really looking forward to the field trips and stuff, getting to see what people are, what their life looks like on the landscape around Shoto and Browning. So I'm looking forward to that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Heath. Jonathan.
Hey everyone, this is Jonathan Bowler in Condon, Montana, up here in the Swan Valley. I appreciate everyone's efforts to balance their work and personal lives with this Grizzly Bear Council. Everyone's got a lot of other considerations going on right now and are given a lot of time to do their best to make this a priority in our list of things to do. And I really appreciate everyone's time. Some of us were able to get together a couple of times over the past week via Zoom or other remote communication. And I just think there's a lot of really great work going on right now. Got a lot of high hopes for the progress we're making. And really am glad that we were able to get this put together so that we continue those discussions. Like Heath said, I'm really looking forward to hopefully being able to reschedule these meetings in Shoto and Browning and be able to visit with those communities when it's a more reasonable time to do that. So thanks everyone. Really looking forward to getting into this stuff with you all today. And thanks to the public for tuning in and providing comments and input to the process. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Jonathan. Cameron.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Thanks.
Yeah, so this is Cameron Kelsey. We own a guest ranch and outfitting business up in Southwest Montana, south of Big Sky. And yeah, it's been a beautiful past couple weeks up here. And I guess I'm almost always socially distancing myself. I don't go in town much off that anyway. But yeah, so just excited to keep moving forward and looking forward to seeing what the groups have put together. I know we had a good conversation in our group, and like I say, look forward to keeping moving.
Awesome. Thank you, Cameron. Kristen.
Hi, good morning. This is Kristen Kipp from the Blackfeet Reservation. I live north of Browning, and I'm glad to be here. I don't really have a whole lot of updates or anything like that. We're still, I don't know if you can see behind me, we're still getting a lot of snow actually. And that's about it. I haven't, with my schedule, I haven't been able to do a lot of the small group work just because of the extreme weather that we've been having. But yeah, that's about it. Glad to be here.
Great. Thank you, Kristen. Good to see you. Glad to hear you're doing well. Lawrence. Are you there, Lawrence? Lawrence, I can't hear you. Can you double check your mute? Lawrence, looks like your mute's going on and off. It looks like it's on right now. Still can't hear you, Lawrence. I don't know if you can hear me, but if you've got both your computer and your phone on audio, just check both of those real quick. All right. I can't hear Lawrence just now, so let's work on getting connected with him and move on down the list for now. Michelle, do you want to say hi?
Hi there, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Excellent. Greetings from rainy Ohio. The positive, I think, although I'd rather be in the snow with you guys, is I walked out on the porch early this morning and there's just a raucous of birds. Definitely something the Midwest has that's amazing. It's great to hear everybody's voices and those brave people that are letting their video happen. More power to you. I have been thinking a lot about what we're doing on the council, and once again, I feel like when I applied, I thought we were going to be this think tank that was going to come up with ideas and such things to move forward with grizzlies on the landscape. And I'm worried that we're moving towards directives that maybe should be open to more of the public, or to at least a public process, because we're just 18 voices, and we have great ideas, and we're trying our best to do the right thing. But I think what we are doing can't take precedence over what the public feels as well. And that would be national public and Montana public. Just thinking that the grizzly bear is in the national trust. So I'm feeling very heavy about that right now. So I wanted to share that. And once again, thank everyone for being here. I didn't think I was going to make it because the home nurse was coming at 8:30. But then I realized that the time changed. So she left just a half hour ago. So it was good timing. And greetings to everyone.
Great, thank you, Michelle, and thanks for making the effort. I know you've got a lot of things happening at home, and it's great to hear your voice as well. Just to respond quickly to your comment on public involvement and your role. So just a reminder that all of you are citizens of Montana that are really trying to come together to think deeply about the role of grizzly bears in our communities and on the landscape, and your thoughts on how we might interact with them, live with them, manage them moving forward, trying to integrate the voice of the public in that conversation now, but certainly coming up with some advice and recommendations. All of that, if it moves forward into some sort of law, policy, regulation plan, would go through a formal public process as well. And that would be another opportunity to engage the public beyond this opportunity. So I don't want to suggest that any of that will be lost or not heard. And I like the framing that you had around your role as a bit of a think tank to step outside of your day-to-day roles for 12 months and do some deep thinking about what might be possible and reflect that back, or reflect that both up to the governor's office and our state agencies, but also out to your fellow Montana citizens and see what we might do. So just wanted to provide that additional framing because it might be helpful for all of us to reflect on that piece, as well as to continue to engage the public throughout this process. Lawrence, you want to try to say hi again, see if you're there, Lawrence?
Sean, this is Charlie.
Hey, Charlie.
So I talked to Lawrence. Pat's going to give him a call and try to sort out his audio problems. So he's working on that. And then he also asked me to check with the council members to see who the last 3 digits of their phone number. We're looking for the 754.
So
hey, Charlie, that's Mark Harrelson.
Oh, hi, Mark. Okay, I'll let Pat know. Otherwise, your phone number shows up in the YouTube channel and nothing else. So, okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark. All right, so we're gonna get Lawrence plugged in here in a second. Nick, you're next up.
Sure. Can you hear me, Sean?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Well, I'm Nick gbac. I work for the Montana Wildlife Federation here in Helena, and I'm thankful to have an employer that has given me the option of working from home, but I am in the office because we have a pretty low traffic office here, and I realize not everybody's job allows that. So anyway, yeah, I think we're making some progress. I think it's good that we're starting to narrow down this list, and we had a really lengthy 3-hour conference call a couple weeks ago with our small group, and you know, we're continuing to narrow things down. So I think it's important that we work toward some type of working draft, and I think we're getting there. So that's it.
Great. Thank you, Nick. Robin King is also not able to join us this morning. She's up in the Yak Valley and is going to try to join us tomorrow, I believe. So just wanted to acknowledge that Robin's also a part of the council and has been contributing to all of our conversations so far. Trina, you want to say hi?
Good morning, everyone. I am also employed by an essential service, so I am at the post office today. I'm the only employee here, so I don't have to worry about anyone else's germs. My boss is under a mandatory 14-day quarantine because she just went on a trip to France and ended up having to come home early because of the coronavirus. So here I am. I live on Birch Creek, which is on the southern end of the Blackfeet Reservation. We've been camping for a few weeks now. The bears are out, the wolves are active, the coyotes are in large supply. I really, really wish that you guys could have come up because we had so much stuff to show you, and we had so many people that were really excited to talk to you. So I really hope that we can get this trip rescheduled. I don't really have many thoughts because I'm exhausted from calving, but yeah, I just hope that we can accomplish something in the next 2 days.
Thanks, Trina, and thanks for making the extra effort to join us from the post office. Really appreciate it. Cole.
Good morning, this is Cole Mannix, and part of a family that ranches in the Blackfoot Valley near Helmville and Ovando, Western Montana, and I live in Helena. Work for a group called Western Landowners Alliance. And yeah, I really thought our small group was making progress and having strong discussion, narrowing some, kind of getting on the same page amidst us four, and I think that's, so I'm excited to bring that forward later today.
Thank you, Cole. Really appreciate it. Lawrence, did we get you figured out?
His browser's having a problem. He's got to try to figure out how to get that working. He's getting a message saying his browser won't allow the access to the microphone.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we'll try to loop Lawrence back in here shortly. So just for those of you that are viewing, Lawrence Grossfield, rancher out of Big Timber, Montana, and has been a part of the council from the beginning as well. So we'll try to give him the opportunity to say hi here later on. Just to round out the introduction, so I don't think I said hi at the very beginning of this. My name's Sean Johnson. I'm at the University of Montana. The university has a Center for Natural Resources and Environmental Policy there. Both myself and my colleague Heather Stokes are part of that center, and we've been serving as the facilitators for the Grizzly Bear Advisory Council. We're also lucky to have the support of quite a few folks from state and federal agencies that have been providing information, input, technical support, and guidance to the council as we move forward. So I do want to acknowledge members of that team and just briefly run through a list of them, most of whom are on the phone or on the video with us just now. So we've got quite a few folks from Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, including Gary Bertolotti, Cecily Costello, Vivica Krauser, Rich Harris, Ken McDonald, Bill Shank, Charlie Sperry, Dylan Tabish, Sarah Silty. We've also need to give a shout out to Pat Luchetti, who's helping us with all the IT and technical stuff this morning from FWP. And then we have a number of federal partners with us as well. So Hillary Cooley and Jody Bush with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Mark Harrelson with USGS, Chris Savage with the Forest Service, Craig Glazer with USDA Wildlife Services. Am I missing anyone who's on the phone or on the video there?
Heather.
Heather, do you want to say hi?
Good morning, everyone. Sean did introduce me, but thanks, Brett. I appreciate that. I also just want to echo everyone's comments about being really appreciative for everyone taking the time this morning to join us via Zoom, and for the public who are listening and watching live. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for continuing the hard and thoughtful work on this process. Because as we are sort of disrupted by the pandemic that's going on, there's also day-to-day lives that are still going on and impacted. And so the work that you council members are doing is critical. And as Caroline and Trina said, that the bears are waking up. And so your work is still very crucial and important. And as best as we can support you to continue this work is what Sean and I and the support team are here to do. It looks like Charlie, your hand's raised again.
Yeah, thanks. I wonder, council members, support team, if you activate your video, at least from time to time, it'll make it a little more engaging for the folks that are watching via the YouTube channel. A few of you have done that, but it makes it a little more interesting.
Well, we want to make sure our viewers are happy, so I think that's a really great idea. So if you're talking, maybe have your video activated. Trying to find myself on the screen here just now. So, hello, everyone. Just want to thank everyone again for saying hi and being a part of the conversation and contributing so much at this really challenging time. Just a couple of things I do want to acknowledge that we, as Trina was suggesting and others have said, we had a really full agenda planned for yesterday, today, and tomorrow. We're not able to do all of that. We hope to be able to head back to those communities and see the landscape and engage in the public. We had also hoped to have conversations on the role of hunting and to hear from the Livestock Loss Board. We're going to figure out how to carry those conversations forward. They may be via webinar or some sort of webcast instead of embedded within an agenda. So just to let people know that we haven't lost sight of those things, and we really do feel that those continue to be critical inputs as we move forward. For the next hour and a half or so, what I'd like to do is spend some time hearing from each of the small groups on the progress that you've made, the thoughts you're having since the Libby meeting. So we left the Libby meeting having put together a bit of a framework. One of the things that we decided would be useful for all of us as we move forward is to think about how we want to structure the conversation and the recommendations that are emerging from the council's work. And so we left there with a document that included really a basic outline of what some future recommendations from the council might look like, starting with some words, a preamble of sorts that would frame the context, the need, and then charge for the council's work, and then including a vision. So really, what does that future state of Montana's relationship with the grizzly bear look like? Offering some guiding principles, and then some recommendations that are categorized largely around the executive order directions. So the role of grizzly bears or not the role of grizzly bears, but around several themes, including grizzly bear distribution, connectivity between ecosystems, conflict prevention, conflict response and protocols, moving bears, the role of hunting. And then we had discussed adding a heading around education. It wasn't explicit in the executive order, but it seemed important. Resources or long-term sustainability of management opportunities, that was in the executive order. And then recreation and tourism. The council's also been thinking about and talking about perhaps a Montana celebration of the grizzly bear in some way, and so that is included in some of the group's small work as well. So our hope and our goal really for the next little bit here is to hear from each of the small groups, an update on what they're thinking, not necessarily a verbatim report out on each of their small group work conversations, but a higher level synthesis of what they talked about, where they really found some areas of agreement, where they think there might be some ongoing challenges, and then if they have any guidance on how we can best use our small group time this afternoon, that would be really helpful. Our goal for this meeting is really to ground everyone in a shared understanding of the small group work that has gone on, so we have shared knowledge and shared ideas. And my thought, and I want to test this with the rest of folks too, is can we leave this meeting in a position to hand off the next version, or what will be a next iteration of these small group frameworks to a writing team. And so in Libby, as you may recall, we started talking about the role of a writing team or a drafting team that could really serve to synthesize all these different pieces. Before we jump into this, I do want to just pause and see if there are any questions, comments, or concerns from the council members. So I'll just pause. If you have any questions, I'll just wait a few seconds here and feel free to jump in. All right, not hearing anyone or seeing anyone jump on. I'm just going to take these in order. So someone from group one. So group one, I will go ahead and list off the names of the individuals who are part of each group just to help us as a council and support team and members of the public recall who's in these different groups. So group one is Brett, Caroline, Chuck, Kristen, and Robin. And because we didn't have a chance to do a lot of coordination ahead of time, we'll just kind of do these ad hoc in terms of who wants to speak first. So is anyone willing to jump in there and share a little bit of the story of group one, and then we'll invite other members from that group to contribute after that first person goes. It might be easier if I just call on someone. So Brett, would you be willing to start us off?
Yeah, sorry, I was on a phone call. So yeah, I'm good to go. I think what we did, we met a couple of different times, and or on the phone, had a phone call at least a couple of different times, and kind of was able to finally get through the entire list from top to bottom. We had planned we planned on meeting in Shoto actually yesterday with group two to try to see if we could put group one and group two's thoughts together. So we had one document kind of going forward, see if we could kind of, mend those two together. Just because of everything else that's gone on, that I think 3 people were able to participate in that yesterday, and it was more of just trying to get used to how Zoom worked. I got on the phone call probably 5 minutes after they had gotten off, so I don't think we actually got anything accomplished yesterday. Jonathan can jump in here, but I think I was hoping that we'd be able to meet today with 2 groups instead of just each group separately, and see if we couldn't do what we planned on trying to do yesterday. So
thanks, Brett.
Great, thanks, Brett. Jonathan, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to jump in there and say thanks to Brett for trying to get on that call. We had gotten off. We were finding it a little bit difficult to get everyone together, but the idea was, like Brett said, to start consolidating some of those ideas. And we were just in our discussions getting some traction there, but we didn't actually kind of get the wheels turned in so much. But I do think that's a positive approach moving forward. And we were really starting to get some intergroup understandings going on and some new ideas coming out of it.
Thank you, guys. So that's a good comment and consideration. Maybe this afternoon, if the groups are feeling willing and able, we combine groups instead of have individual group work. So we could think about doing group 1 and 2 together and group 3 and 4 together. I guess I'll ask for your feedback on that. If that feels like you're ready to engage in that synthesis step next, that would be good. So Brett, do you want to say anything more about the actual conversations group 1 had, or any areas where you were starting to see some clarity, or where you're looking for additional guidance from the council?
You know, I don't have anything in writing in front of me. It's on my computer and I can't get my printer to work, but
okay.
As we still, I think we actually are pretty much together, and you other guys can jump in here, but I think we're pretty much together on everything except for the role of hunting. That was, we're still kind of having some debates about that, but everything else I felt pretty comfortable that we were kind of coming together on everything else. Anybody else on the
good?
Anybody else here jump in if you're, give me some thoughts.
No, I think that's right. This is Caroline. And then with the hunting, we just didn't feel ready to put anything down on paper. We wanted a little bit more discussion with the whole group and to hear from folks from the agencies and experts. We just weren't quite ready to do that one yet. But otherwise, I think our goal was really to synthesize a lot of what had already been put out there and what we had already discussed, and try and come up with kind of overarching approaches to the main themes. It still needs some wordsmithing and clarity around some of the terms that we're using, but I found it really helpful to kind of distill it into bigger ideas and areas that would be helpful rather than going too in depth and into the weeds. So I think that was pretty much our goal, and we had some great conversations.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Caroline. And just to remind everyone who's listening in that the road the council has traveled so far was to really do some early brainstorming about ideas, recommendations that they might have across all these different themes that were articulated in the executive order, and informed by the different panel discussions that the council has had in their meetings to date, as well as to respond to some management questions that FWP themselves had articulated for the council's consideration. So we generated really a pretty robust spreadsheet of different things that could inform the council's conversation. And then in Libby, we decided, let's take a step back and look at this overarching framework and put together this outline of what we want to accomplish, and really ask ourselves, what are those overarching themes? How can we start to articulate some broad level recommendations that consolidate, that synthesize, that bring together some of our ideas, recognizing that we're trying to come up with some direction that will work for the entire state. So Caroline, you did a nice job reminding us that that was our goal and our charge, and that it seems like you guys are being pretty successful in that. So anyone else from group 1 want to jump in? Chuck, Kristen?
I'm good. They shared everything. I think we are pretty much in unison, except like what Brett and Caroline shared, that the role of hunting can be a tough one. And we still need to cover some ground in the linkage zones. That could be a little tough too, but no, they covered it.
Thanks, Chuck. Kristen, did you want to weigh in?
I don't really have a lot to add. The only thing that, oh, there we are. Excuse me. The only thing I would like to add though is we got to start having those hard conversations now instead of putting them off. And that's just my personal opinion. We got to deal with it at some point. So whether it's uncomfortable or not, So that's about it.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. I appreciate that. And that came up in Libby too, that I think council members are really at that point where they recognize the weight of some of these challenges that we're facing, and that some of these recommendations might be controversial and might be hard to deal with. But you all seem really interested in taking a problem-solving approach and trying to wade into that space and kind of hit some of those hard challenges head on. So appreciate that perspective. So thanks, Group 1. A great example of a report out and using your video so that we could all engage and see you. So thank you, really well done. Group 2, who wants to kick off that group? So Group 2 was Jonathan, Darren, Cameron, and Cole. Jonathan, you started before, so why don't we kick it back to you?
Sure, thanks, Sean. Well, Group 2 tends to have difficulty following instructions on these things, and we kind of stuck with that this time around, and we wanted to just jump right into some of those difficult questions and discussions. And we figured that as a small group, maybe that'd be a good place to start with those things. So we went through and attempted to answer all of those questions that FWP had submitted to us. You know, knowing that it was a brainstorm session and trying to get some basic ideas of what our group could, at least, I don't want to say necessarily agree upon, but stomach for the time being might be a better way. Just getting some words underneath each of those each of those questions so that we can begin to think more about them. To do that, hold on, I'm going to try to bring up our worksheet there. So we went through each of those, and we found that a lot of the questions were really based on grizzly bear distribution and the types and ways of managing bears in the different areas that we're discussing. Here in Montana, we've got a great diversity of both biologically suitable and socially acceptable landscapes, and every different combination of those two things really makes for a lot of different opportunities for management techniques and strategies and what is necessary in that particular landscape. So we started to try to delineate 4 different basic areas of Montana that we could think about as far as human and bears interactions go. And so we had area 1 that was kind of the areas within and surrounding the recovery zones of the Northern Continental Divide and Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, these areas that have a relatively stronger populations within them. The second area within and surrounding the Cabinet Yaak recovery zones and also the Bitterroot Selway. So these are those established zones that have that are lacking those strong populations of the Northern Continental Divide or Greater Yellowstone. A third area would be those zones in between areas 1 and 2, the connectivity zones, if we consider them that way, that tend to really cover a mix of both private and public landscapes. And then a fourth area that are really just outside of those other 3. They're not within, they're not providing connection between those established recovery zones, nor really reside within those core areas. And I think, that for us, it was a way for us to think about the issue and start to really break it into smaller parts to be able to consider the questions FWP had asked and those essential aspects that we were tasked by the governor to consider. So I think we found some value there. It allowed us to kind of speak the same language within our own group to discuss these harder issues. And we've been able to start also moving some of those original emerging recommendations into those answers of those questions through going through that process. So that worked well for us, and others can jump in.
Thanks, Jonathan. Darren, Cameron, Cole, you want to jump in?
I can jump in real quick. Real quickly, I think group 2 had a really good, strong framework about how we scheduled all those out. So we just kind of moved stuff over into your new framework that we had from various recommendations, whatever, and had more discussions as Jonathan outlined. And I thought these were very good discussions. And I guess I would encourage people to have different discussions about the tough topics in their small groups, because it kind of maybe is more palatable than 18 people at one time. So I thought it went really well for our group. I think we have some really robust and good comments throughout the area, and we're still commenting on it. Each one of us keeps grabbing it every couple of days and adding to it. So it was a really good time, and thought we made real good progress. And thank Jonathan for kind of pulling it all together as a recording person again.
Great, thanks, Darren. Appreciate those additions. Cameron, Cole?
I just chime in to say I think Jonathan and Darren said it really well. I feel like our process has been pretty constructive, and they summarized it well.
Yeah, I would just agree with Cole there as well. I don't know that I have a lot to add, but just echoing what everyone said.
Nice. Well, thanks for continuing to color outside the lines. I think it's advancing the conversation really well and helping us think about how do we bring together all of these challenging issues in a way that it both advances the conversation but responds to some of the management needs and challenges that are out there. I think introducing this idea of different areas is really something that has been on a lot of different people's minds, but for you guys to articulate what those areas might look like is great. And then, as we start digging into some of the specifics, it looks like you guys have referenced those different areas throughout your recommendations. So really appreciate the good work and thinking that's gone into that. So before we move into groups 3 and 4, I just do want to pause and open this up to any questions from other council members. Do you have any clarifying questions at this point, or any additional comments you'd like to ask of groups 1 or 2?
Hey, Sean, this is Erin.
Hey, Erin, go ahead.
I guess coming from those updates and your question about combining groups, we haven't quite got as far as a couple meetings in our group yet. And so I would really appreciate still keeping to our smaller group. For now, not that, as we move into the future, combining groups is actually going to make sense, I think. But for now, I would appreciate the opportunity to stay in our smaller groups so that we can actually have some of these conversations.
Thanks, Erin. Good comment, and exactly the kind of feedback I was looking for to see where people want to head this afternoon. So sounds like some interest there in staying in your existing small groups for a couple more hours and continuing to build out these conversations, including struggling with some of these challenging questions that we're facing. Michelle, looks like you'd like to chime in.
Yeah, I have a quick question. The creating areas seems very logical, but I wonder how equitable it is, just because the way it might be read from one area, it's like, oh, well, you're not going to take care of me here, but you are going to take care of them over there. I think we should be careful with that. I wonder if managing as a whole with protocols, with flexibility, might be a better way to look at it. Just because, one area is more livestock. If I look at the Bitterroot, we've got subdivisions right next to ranchers. And so I'm not sure, and it's a connectivity zone. So there's so many variables. I want to hear more about it, but I'm wondering about the equitability of that and what that group's thoughts are on that.
Thanks, Michelle. Good question. Jonathan, not to put you on the spot, but do you want to quickly respond to at least the conversation your group has been having? And I think a lot of these things will continue to be carried forward and further informed by questions like Michelle's and other comments from council members. But if you guys have waded into any of those considerations, it'd be helpful to hear from you now.
I'll weigh in. If others have something to add in, please go ahead and jump on into it. But you know, I was trying to be really careful to say that none of this is definitive on our part. We all really understand the necessity to move these conversations forward, and if we figured if we can't start that in our small group, it's going to be much harder to start in the larger group. So, you know, we've consistently been just trying to, you know, how do we make that next step? What if we even just construct some, you know, that was, these areas were a way for us to be considering the fact that while we want, how do I say this? It was just to create a common language. It's not about how we're going to treat bears, but more of how we're going to account for the fact that Montana most definitely is made up by diverse social and biological landscapes. So to Michelle's kind of comment there, to say that we wouldn't have different treatments in the middle of the Bob Marshall Wilderness versus the middle of the Bitterroot in a populated, subdivided area would be hard for me to wrap my head around. It's like we definitely would have to view those areas differently. And so for us, we decided to just loosely create a couple different designations that we could at least work within on this first step. Does that make sense, Michelle?
Michelle, I think you might be on mute.
Sorry, I'm
There you
trying.
go.
Here I go. Yeah, that does make sense. And I agree with it. I'm just wondering, because right now they have bears in the Bob Marshall and bears in the parks and bears outside of the parks. And they are managing them with the protocols they have now, with the flexibility. And I'm sure that there are different choices made based on where they are. And I'm hesitant. And I don't think we really need to go further into this because I think we're getting into the weeds, but I just wanted to, I wanted to keep the conversation or the thought open. I'm hesitant to tie the hands of bear specialists. I think they are on the ground and they kind of know what's necessary for the area. And I think they've been using the protocols right now, at least my conversations with them, quite well to, with flexibility to make those decisions. So I don't want to tie their hands. So I definitely, I understand where you're coming from, and I agree with you that they're going to be managed differently. I just, I don't want to tie anybody's hands, I guess is what I'm saying, or to say this is what's going to happen here and this is what's going to happen here. And it sounds like this is more of a conversation, and I guess I just wanted to throw my thoughts in. And yeah, so I think you guys are doing an awesome job, and I think thinking about it that way is really important, and I'm quite certain that our bear specialists do that. And I think it weighs on them heavily. So thanks for your work, guys.
I have a quick clarifying question. Jonathan,
ahead,
or Cole or whoever. I was just curious if you guys, when you guys did that, because I mean, we do kind of have to somehow formulate our thoughts around these different areas. And so in my head, I've kind of not separated them, but I appreciate kind of how you guys went about that. I was just wondering if you incorporated, because this was sort of done through the NCDE conservation strategy already. And so how did you incorporate that, which had already been done, into kind of this idea?
This is Cole, Aaron. I'll take a stab at it from our group. So basically, this is just our group's attempt to create a language where we could talk about it. So it was not an academic exercise. It was something that we were trying to make sense out of FWP questions for us. And it's, you know, there's no intention to tie the hands of bear specialists or managers, but we are being asked specific recommendations within these specific categories. I mean, that's why we've had the council, is because bear managers and bear specialists have run up against questions that they can't currently answer given a changing situation on the ground. And so You know, for us, no matter what the budget that the state has to allocate to bears, somehow it has to be prioritized because it's it's going to be limited. And so this is not just a question of distribution, but it's also a question of where do you put resources? Where do you focus what are always going to be limited resources, even if they increase? And anytime you begin to ask, you know, a specific question about, you've got a bear that for some management reason needs to be moved in some way, then you have to know, you know, so what are the different criteria that help you understand in what direction and to what sort of land? So for us, the areas were just a way for us as 4 people to begin having a common language together. They were not, I wouldn't say, unless you guys might correct me, but my understanding is that they were not based on the NCDE strategy you referenced, Aaron. Just based on what makes sense to us.
Sean, can I interrupt for a second?
Please, go ahead, Trina.
I just got texted a question. The public is wondering what we're talking about, so they don't know what we're talking about in our small groups. So can you just kind of clarify that we're, you know, talking about writing recommendations and working on the words and et cetera, so that people understand what we're talking about?
Yeah, happy to. So if you're just tuning in and joining online, thank you for joining the conversation. My name's Sean Johnson. I'm with the University of Montana and one of the facilitators with Heather Stokes for the council's work. What the council members are currently talking about is some of the small group work that they've been doing in between meetings. And so one of their tasks after each of our public meetings is to really make sense of all the information they're receiving around the different topics that are articulated in the executive order that created the council from the governor's office, and around other issues that they're really concerned about when thinking about the role of grizzly bears in our communities and landscapes. Following our Libby meeting, and at that meeting, we created and shared back with the council and those who were present an emerging, what we were calling a skeletal framework, to start to hang some of the ideas and emerging ideas and recommendations from the council onto a document so that we could start to put pen to paper and really start to think about the language and the words and the thoughts that the council wants to put forward in their conversations. So there are 4 different working groups, and we're working through the conversations that each of those small working groups has had. Now we've just heard from group 1 and group 2. That framework that they put together includes some high level thinking around context and need, a vision, some guiding principles, and some specific recommendations around some of these key themes. Group 2 was just talking about, as they were thinking through that and responding to some questions that Fish, Wildlife, and Parks had articulated from a management perspective, one of the constructs that they thought would be helpful to guide their group conversation was thinking about different areas or potential areas for managing bears and how those areas could help articulate and refine some of their emerging thoughts. So that's the conversation we're having right now. This is the first time that it's coming forward to the council as a whole. And so there's just some back and forth conversation and dialogue right now among members of the council. Anything else that would be helpful to clarify what we're doing?
Hey, Sean, this is Darren.
Hey, Darren, jump in.
Maybe just a quick response to both Aaron and Michelle. This was never meant to restrict by any means, but everybody has decisions about bears, whether that be management bears or just bears alone throughout the state of Montana. And you really can't classify how you talk about them unless you kind of have an area framework that we could, as a 4 of us, could talk about. You know, example, if it's a bear that's not causing a lot of problems, but it's getting seen a lot in the connectivity areas, there's probably a lot more tolerance, lower leeway given to that for both the genetic exchange and populational differences, right? That's how we wanted to have the dialogue, is so we could say, okay, as we answer these hard questions that the Fish and Wildlife people are asking us, how do we make decisions, or how do we help them make decisions within different areas? You know, a grizzly bear standing in the middle of Fort Benton probably is going to have to be discussed a little bit different than one right on the edge of the Goat Lick at Glacier National Park, right? So That's why we did it, was we just had to wrap our heads around common language. I appreciate Cole's word on that. That's really good, but it was not restrictive. It's just how do we talk about it as we answer some of the questions, if that helps any clarity.
Yeah, this is Erin. I appreciate that. I mean, the reason I brought that up is because I think, when I read the NCDE conservation strategy, there is some of that too, that same thinking that you have to have a conversation kind of around areas, or at least the conversation is separated for each different area and how they thought about it. So thanks.
Hey, Sean, you mind if I jump in real quick?
Dylan, yeah, please introduce yourself.
Yes, this is Dylan Tabish with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and I just wanted to let everybody know I'm monitoring the public input that's coming in through that portal on the website. And if anybody has questions out there or any comments you want me to share with the council, submit them through that public comment link. The only comment I've received so far related to what we're doing right now is if folks could just remind them their name. And most of you have the name at the bottom of your left screen, but a few of you don't. So if you wouldn't mind just saying your name real quick when you start talking. But thank you, and I'm here listening as well.
Great, thanks, Dylan. Appreciate you monitoring that in real time so that we can keep up with everyone. And I'll try to model best practices. This is, again, Sean Johnson with the University of Montana. So I think anytime we're talking, it would be good to just remind people who we are. Caroline.
Hey, it's Caroline Bird. I think the idea of areas is really intriguing and helps us order kind of our thinking around it. But I'd love to have some thoughts from the bear folks, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and especially, and just and along kind of Erin's suggestion too. Is this something that's already kind of out there? But I find it. Anyway, I'd love to get their input on this idea because I think it's intriguing.
Great, thanks, Caroline. And yeah, did want to remind council members that if you do have questions or clarifying issues that you'd like the support team to address, this is a great opportunity to do that. Cecily, do you mind if I lean on you to start that conversation around what's in the NCD conservation strategy and how it may already help inform and advance this conversation around different areas?
Hi, okay. Clearly, we have some zones that we've identified in the conservation strategies for both the NCDE and the GYE. But I guess my thought would be to just allow the council to kind of think of them in their own terms as well, and not, I mean, obviously the documents have some things that are laid out that can't really be negotiated, but I also think that the idea of thinking about these different areas, you don't necessarily have to put lines on a map to understand what you're talking about. So I think that just thinking about what the goal of bears being in those areas might be would be helpful for the conversation. So I'm supportive of thinking about the zones, if you call them zones.
Thanks, Cecily. And could you just say who you are again?
I'm Cecily Costello. I'm a research wildlife biologist with FWP, and I focus on grizzly bears.
Awesome, thank you. Caroline, does that get at the question you were asking?
Yeah, thanks, Cecily. No, that's super helpful.
Yeah,
good. So let's take a couple more questions just now on. Yeah, just a second,
I just
Michelle.
wanted
just want to give. Oh, just was going to give us a roadmap. So we'll take a few more questions and have conversation here, and then we'll hear from groups 3 and 4, and then open it back up to dialogue. So Michelle, please go ahead.
Great. Yeah, I actually agree with that. I'd like to hear from the bear managers, the people on the ground who are at this time making decisions. What I heard from them was where they feel their hands are tied are on these relocation in between recovery areas. And I haven't heard a lot of our hands are tied. We can't do what we need to do with their protocols. And from what I've read of the protocols, they seem pretty open and relatively flexible. So I'd like to hear from managers on the ground. I don't know if any of them are on the phone call.
I'm not sure we do have anyone on the phone just now. Craig's on the phone. I know he's not a bear manager. Cecily, is that something you could address? Or would it be helpful to see if we could invite one of the bear managers on for later in our conversation in the next couple of days to address that directly?
Charlie's hand is raised. Charlie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Sean, this is Charlie Sperry. I was just going to see if Ken was listening in. He too would perhaps have a perspective. I mean, the idea that Cecily's getting at, that whether you call them zones, draw lines on the map, but it's that idea of that in certain situations or environments, whether it's ranch land or suburban area, what should be the management protocol in those different situations, and balancing that with not wanting to be so rigid that it ties the hands of our bear specialists, but at least giving some guidance. But I was curious if Ken is listening in, if he also might have a thought on that one.
Ken, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
There you are.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay. This is Ken McDonald. I'm the wildlife chief with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And the question was sort of garbled. Can one of you guys rephrase or re-ask it?
Michelle, do you mind rephrasing your question?
Yeah. What I'm wondering is, the bear managers on the ground, do they feel their hands are tied with the present protocols, aside from what to do with bears in connectivity areas?
Okay, that helps. From what I understand in visiting with them, I think the overall feeling is their hands are not tied, that they do have the flexibility. Obviously, because we're dealing with a listed species right now, the ultimate decision on the disposition of a bear that's in a conflict is ultimately it's up to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Hillary. But based on some discussions we had at the end of 2019, specific to that question about, are our hands tied or do we have the flexibility we need? I think the general feeling was the flexibility is there, with again, given the constraints of ESA and what we need to do. The point you made regarding the connectivity areas versus in the established recovery areas is a good one. So the discussions were really referencing where bears are already established in those kind of core recovery areas, and the issue in the connectivity areas, places we don't have bears established, but bears are moving into, is a little bit more complex, as we've talked about a couple times, in terms of if you're moving bears, if you're catching a bear that's in one of those connectivity areas, like some of the examples we've had, like the basin bear or white sulfur, what do you do with that bear? If you wanted to move it, within a nearby area, that would be problematic because of the laws surrounding transplants and NEPA and things like that. So there's a little bit of right now it's a procedural issue, but right now the hands are tied in terms of trying to move bears in new places. Hopefully that answered the question.
Thank you. Yes, I
Thanks.
appreciate that, Ken.
Thanks, Ken. Really appreciate that conversation.
Can I
It
jump
looks
in
like,
one more time?
yeah, please, Cecily.
Okay. I think what we need to understand is that there is not an issue with the manager's hands being tied by what is in policy right now. What we're really dealing with is bears are moving beyond the areas where we have policy. And so we actually kind of have to create some new policy regarding these areas in between. And the realities of what is in between these areas makes things a little more difficult than what is present within the recovery zones and the areas immediately adjacent. We're running into more people, and we don't want to make too many strong decisions without some public engagement. And so that's why you guys have been joined together to help us with starting that process of public engagement in terms of how to manage what happens between these areas. And then the other aspect of some of the difficulty of translocating bears outside of the areas is actually finding a place that we can release a bear safely without it, immediately running into people on trails and things like that. So there's some limitations on places that we can put bears. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Thanks, Cecily. I think that was really helpful clarification. So again, that was Cecily Costello with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. This is Sean Johnson with University of Montana. I see 3 hands raised here on the side, Aaron, Charlie, and Cole. Just take those in order, and then maybe from there we'll move on to groups 3 and 4. So, Aaron.
No, that was my earlier hand raise.
Old hand. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Thanks.
I'm a little behind the time, so if you want to lower your hand, then I won't continue to see it. And Cole, did you want to weigh in too, or was that from before?
Sure. I just had a quick comment again on group 2 and what we were thinking is that one of the FWP questions that we were given was currently they talk about biologically suitable and socially acceptable when deciding where bears will be in Montana. And we, our opinion as 4 people was basically that every part of Montana that's where, where a house is not built is theoretically biologically suitable, and socially acceptable is so incredibly subjective. And so we felt like while it makes sense to us to think about it that way, it doesn't end up being very helpful when actually making management decisions. And that was a big reason, because we felt that those 2 things were, particularly the socially acceptable thing, was so subjective. We thought that, it's sort of the council's task to try to help sort that out. As where is the public at in terms of their values of this socially acceptable piece? And that's another reason why it led us to talk about these areas. That's what I wanted to say in clarification. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Cole. Yeah, I think that's really helpful to highlight that and bring that forward. I know it's something that's on your group's mind and other groups have been talking about too. Really, that socially acceptable question, it is very subjective, and I think it is the central challenge of this council in many ways, is to try to provide some guidance around that element. Lawrence, it looks like maybe you've got your audio on. Do you want to try saying hi?
No, I don't have audio. I switched to my phone. I gave up.
Oh, okay. Well, it's good to hear your voice.
Okay. Yeah. Lawrence Grossfield. I'm a cattle rancher in South Central Montana, Big Timber, actually. So, and in response to this last little, your comment and Cole's comment, yeah, I think social acceptability is, I mean, it is, you know, in the eye of the beholder, but on the other hand, it's a reality. You might call it a political reality, but it's a reality, and that's something we really need to look at. I'm hoping we'll be getting there before long.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, I'm going to keep you on the hot seat here. We're going to transition to groups 3 and 4. Want to thank everyone for your really good and patient and clear engagement on these conversations so far. This seems to be working better than I even anticipated. So thank you, groups 1 and 2, for those report outs, and everyone for your discussion. If you want to continue to try to use the technology to raise your hand, I'll try to make sure I look for it there. I know Heather's helping me in the background, so shout out to Heather and Dylan for monitoring the public comments. So group 3, this is Lawrence, Annie, Aaron, Heath, and Nick. Lawrence, do you want to start with the report out from your group, and then we'll ask everyone else to chime in?
I think Aaron is our reporter.
Oh, okay. Aaron, you've been nominated.
I assigned it to Annie.
There she is. Annie, great. Thank you.
Yes. So our group is, we're only able to have, my name's Annie Shusky. I live in East Glacier. I am a expedition leader and guide for 6 months of the year. And then I am an employee for the Browning Public Schools for the other part of this year. Our group was only able to meet once during the last few weeks since our Libby meeting to go over and consolidate the Excel sheet to a Word document. We're a little behind looking at everybody else's, the other 3 groups, it seems. We were pretty literal with taking from the Excel sheet and putting it into the Word document. There was concern about losing ideas or losing context and wording. And so our document is still fairly long. We also put a lot of subheadings in that made sense for our group. Moving forward this afternoon, I think it would be really good for our group 3, to work independently to consolidate these a little bit more. Looking at group 1, I see the direction we are headed, and we would have got there if we had been able to have another phone conversation prior to this meeting. So I think it's important for us to be able to have those conversations. I also think by the end of these 2 days on Zoom and our meeting, I would like to join another group to start having more of these discussions again. I worry that group 3, we're going to kind of keep being a step behind unless we really step forward and just join the other groups after this small group this afternoon. And so we can start having some of these harder discussions that we need to start having. If any of my group wants to join in.
Yeah, I'm kind of
Thanks,
thinking
Annie.
this, sorry.
No, go ahead, Aaron. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Aaron, sorry. I think I agree with you. I think that when I looked at the other groups, what they have done, I think we just need some time still to get through our conversations. And then what ideally I'd like to do is look at group 1 and 2's kind of format. And if we can actually dig into that a little bit. And if you guys don't mind, groups 1 and 2, us, maybe if it makes sense to us to use some similar thinking to frame our heads around some of these conversations. I just don't think we're there yet, but I would really appreciate after our call today if we can kind of start merging, I don't know that we're there yet, but if we can start merging into that 1 and 2 format to some degree, it would be good. But it might take, an additional call after today. Not sure.
I also want to add that group 1 and 2 have done a great job with the framework. Group 4 has put some effort and a lot of work into the preamble and the vision part of the skeleton framework. And I don't think group 1 and 2 quite had those on there. I know Jonathan wrote a really wonderful idea and consolidated ideas for education, but I also don't want to lose what 4 has done with the preamble and vision. I think that was a big step in the right direction. Thank you for doing that.
That's great. I haven't had a chance to look at that. I am wondering, Sean, then if we should have some discussion or thinking around that preamble and vision draft, separating that a little bit from the other stuff to some degree in a writing team, just to, I don't know, I'm just trying to figure out, like, rather than kind of breaking those two things apart as we're having some discussion around the meat of the bones, but then maybe we can all work as a group, as one group, to try and flesh out that vision idea.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and be interested to hear what other people think too. But I think we're in a good spot in terms of the group work, and now we're really digging into those questions of how do we start to combine these conversations across groups. I know some groups want to continue working like group 3 does, to continue to hone and refine and clarify and synthesize some of your internal group conversations. I think that's really important. Moving forward, we're going to have to cross the bridge in terms of some of these other questions. And I think my initial thought or suggestion would be for whether it's the writing team or some of us on the support side of things, to help synthesize and kind of combine what we have across all these groups once we get to that point, and then to start to make some of those assignments. So if people really want to spend some time thinking about the preamble and vision, we can lean into those people for that piece versus some of the more specific recommendations. But certainly what's benefited us as a group so far is that you guys have been all very engaged in every element of this and really listening to each other in terms of where each of you are coming from and contributing your voice. So I want to make sure that as we move forward, we're continuing to find ways to really make sure all of your voices and expertise are being brought into this. So yeah, all that to say, we got some decisions to make about how we do that. So Heath, Nick, Lawrence, anything you want to add from group 3?
No, I'm with the others. I will emphasize that we haven't gotten all that far yet, but it's a tough task, for each of the groups to get together and then try and put it all in one. I imagine that we're going to have to do it the same way. I mean, on video rather than in person, and it seems like a nearly impossible task.
Yeah, I'm not sure we'll be able to synthesize everything in a call like this, but we can hopefully clarify some tasks and do some good in-between work and come back together for conversation like this. It seems like we're having some good discussions. So really do appreciate everyone's willingness to have the small group conversation, bring them back, reflect on where we are and what some of those next steps might look like. Heath or Nick, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, this is Heath. I'm just looking forward to having our meeting, I guess, this afternoon, and hopefully we can have some more discussions about some more specific recommendations coming forth from our group. I guess we've kind of just tried to put everything together as far as ideas that were in the original. We just kind of went through it and moved it over, and we need to go through that and kind of clean that up, and hopefully we'll be making progress there this afternoon. Thanks.
Great, thanks. And just a reminder for people, and I'm not doing a good job myself, to introduce ourselves each time we speak. So that was Lawrence Grossfield first, rancher from Big Timber, and then Heath Martinell, rancher down southwest Montana near Dell. Annie, looks like your hand's up.
No, that was from earlier. Thank you.
Boy, I'm not doing a very good job tracking. So thank you. So Nick, anything from you before we move on to group 4?
I'll just add that this is Nick Jivak again in Helena. I think Aaron's dead on. I mean, we had a really productive 3-hour call, but we need to have another one. I think once we come out with our, highest priority recommendations, we'll start, once we merge those with the other groups, obviously that's the beginning of our total group draft, and they may differ a little bit, and those will be the discussions hopefully we can have as an entire council. So I think this afternoon will be important for our group.
Good. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate those thoughts. So just again, Sean Johnson, University of Montana, one of the facilitators. Before we move to group 4, for those of you that are listening online, really appreciate your patience. I'm guessing this is difficult to follow from afar. Each of the working groups are working through some working draft documents and are thinking about the progress that they're making, sharing that back with one another. And we'll continue to move forward with some small group conversations later today to advance these conversations with the additional information and insight that they're gaining from one another. I think moving forward, our hope is to be able to provide some preliminary draft information back to the public for your ongoing input and feedback. For now, if you've got any ideas, suggestions, recommendations that you'd like the council to integrate into your thinking, you can go online on the WP Grizzly Bear Advisory Council website and submit your comments there. So we really do appreciate those thoughts. And I think in many ways, that's the most important contribution you can make right now, is just to be thinking about some of these management challenges facing the state and how you want your voice to be a part of the solution to some of those challenges. So group 4, we've got Greg, Michelle, Chad, and Trina in group 4.
Hey,
Is
Sean.
there a spokesperson for that group? Oh, yeah, Heather.
This is Heather. Just in reference to the public, what I want to encourage them, if they haven't been tuning in or following the meetings thus far, is that the executive order for the charge of the council is on the website, the GBAC website, the same page where they found the YouTube link. And also the FWP questions that the council members keep referring to are in the December meeting summary minutes that can also be found on the webpage. So if public members want to have a better understanding of the framework that we keep referencing, that's a really great place to go and find it.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for providing that guidance. It's a good reminder that we need to be very deliberate and clear in what we're talking about when we're just communicating online and over the phone. So thank you. So group 4, do we have a person who's willing to lead off?
I'll start.
Okay, thanks, Trina.
This is Trina Bradley, Birch Creek. What we have found in our conversations about these recommendations that we're trying to write is we've hit a wall, because we can't really continue without knowing what the entire council is thinking. So we are looking forward to moving into a whole group to talk about this stuff instead of just the 4 of us talking about it over and over and over. So written recommendations, but we've gotten a few that are going to need the whole council to talk about because they are going to be controversial. One of them being hunting. Some people don't want hunting. Some people do want hunting. There's many different levels of how acceptable hunting is and where. So those are conversations that we're going to need to have as an entire group. Otherwise, I don't think we're being effective in our small group, because all we're doing is waiting for the other people to come up with their own ideas, when we could be looking at these as a whole and moving forward a lot faster. I think maybe I am wrong, but that's how I feel. So we are to that point, I think, in our recommendations. We are still working on the wording of some things, but again, we need the whole council's input. And Michelle, you can take over from there.
Yeah, we definitely wanted to talk with the entire group about some things. But what we did as a group was to kind of categorize all of the recommendations from the spreadsheet into those, into that format. And I think we did a pretty good job of that. And we also got mostly through recommendation wording that we all agreed on, and including the vision and preamble. And those were just kind of piecing together the pieces from the spreadsheet as well that had to do with vision and overall decisions. So I think we still wanted to talk about a few more things in our small group, so we still need a little time there. I'm not sure, especially on the video, how we're all going to talk about some of those bigger issues. And I'm not sure if we wouldn't want to start. And Sean, you probably have a better idea. And by the way, I'm Michelle Dietrich from Hamilton, but I'm in Ohio right now. But to move forward, what if we had some sort of Google Doc that said, you know, of the tough ones like hunting, and have everybody kind of throw their thoughts in on hunting so that we could review that before we have a group discussion. So we can get an idea of kind of where everyone's coming from. So the basic information is out there, and then we start talking about it as a group. I don't know if that would facilitate things just in this video conferencing format.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. So I've been thinking about this too. And Trina, thank you for kicking things off and sharing that thought and perspective, because I think throughout this process, we're trying to find ways to make sure that all council members can contribute and be heard, but also advance conversations in smaller groups so that we're getting that dynamic interaction and that kind of initial sense of where different people are and trying to bring those together. So it's been a little bit of a both and conversation in terms of how we do that. I think both are helpful. I think to Michelle's point, one of the things that we're going to need to think about moving forward is how do we not just think about this framework and recommendations around these, but where is it that you guys want to have additional conversation? What are the questions that you have? Where do you see these sticking points? And so maybe we need to be thinking about within each of these different major headings within this skeletal framework, not just those ideas that you have, but what questions, what gaps there are in your mind, where you see challenges, and then we can maybe have some dedicated webinars or focused conversations around those different topics, whether it's the role of hunting or something else. Around the role of hunting in particular, I think it's important to remember that we haven't yet been presented with much information from the support team or from people who have expertise in that field. I know that Ken was prepared to provide that context with us in Shoto, and we're not doing that currently. That is something that could be teed up pretty quickly, though. So especially when we get ready for that conversation, I think we could move into that one. But there are others, and I think instead of just having us think about from the support team's perspective what information we think is relevant, I think providing some sort of way for you all as council members to really frame your thoughts, your questions, some of these key challenges will be critical to inform that conversation too. And we might just have to do that kind of topic by topic. Erin, it looks like maybe you'd like to weigh in.
Actually, Sean, this is Heather. Sorry, just to interrupt really quick.
Oh,
Trina just
yeah.
texted me and said she just lost service. So, and she's been trying to get back in to reconnect. So Pat, I'm wondering if you might be able to reach out to her.
I'm also getting warnings that service is weak, so.
Okay, thanks, Erin. Erin, did you have a question? I see your hand
Yeah.
was raised.
Well, I guess one thing I was thinking is, because I just briefly glanced at Group 4's work too, and I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to look at that before today, but I feel like everybody has done all this great work to kind of flesh out the ideas. So I'm curious, I know we talked at the last meeting, if our group kind of does the similar approach and kind of flesh out those ideas while looking at the other groups, I think a next step could be to look at all 4 of those and start to combine things to some degree, at least under similar headings or something. But we had talked about having FWP staff assist us with some of that, just general combining without, taking away the context, right? Being very careful there. But, and then I'm kind of thinking, just trying to plan ahead in this environment, because I don't know how long it's going to be till we get out, but I don't want to delay anything. So then taking chunks of those, of a combined document, whether it's hunting and having a webinar on that and just a group discussion specifically around that. So it's not like, maybe it's not 3 hours, maybe it's like a 1 hour or 2 hour call. So it would be a little bit different than how we've been planning meetings previously, but I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out how we move forward, because I feel like we need to. But I'm wondering if we might need some help in that initial combination of documents.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. That's similar to what I was thinking, and maybe just not as clear in the way I was articulating it. So if we could move through today and tomorrow with getting as far as we can within our groups, move forward to combining across those groups, and then spending some dedicated time either in webinars or however the more Zoom calls, whatever the format might be, to chunk that out in bite-sized pieces and look at all those different areas of focus. It would be nice maybe to have a separate team looking at the preamble and vision if people are interested in that piece. But I think that makes a lot of sense to me as well. And I guess I'd just ask all of you to be thinking about that process piece moving forward. Darren? Did you want to weigh
Thanks,
in?
Sean. Yep, appreciate it. Maybe playing a little devil's advocate on that. I don't think these four or 5 piece in groups have to have definitive full agreement recommendations. If one person wants to say there should be no hunting in Montana, and that's a recommendation that group, even though they don't agree on it, can bring it back to the group. I think we need to get these down so we can have a constructive dialogue versus in certain areas. I'm just throwing the hunting one out because I kind of go about. Does that make sense? I don't think we want to get limiting people's input on that only the agreement comes out of these 4 groups. It's okay to have different recommendations to get them on the table and talk about. I guess I would encourage that. I mean, we're not going to be able to do this like we wouldn't sit in a room right now in the next month or so at least. So I would encourage to have that dialogue and maybe present it that way so we can at least see these dissenting things.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree too. I think that's been the council's desire from the beginning, is to find those areas of agreement where possible, but also articulate those areas of disagreement or concern where there's still real value in having the conversation. So let's make sure we grab those. Thanks for the thumbs up, Michelle. Brett, I saw your hand at 1.2. Is there a comment?
Yeah, I think that was kind of Jonathan and I's kind of idea was, each of our groups have kind of have put together our ideas, and the thought is that by combining group 1 and 2 that we could kind of close those gaps up where we need to. So that was kind of our thoughts going forward. So.
Awesome, thank you. So we've got about 15 minutes before we're going to break groups. So any clarifying questions for groups 3 and or 4 before we move on to some of our next steps? So questions, thoughts that have been raised by those contributions? And Trina, did we get you back online? Okay, I guess we're still waiting for Trina. Hopefully we can get her back on the phone. So questions either for those groups, or if you guys want to continue a conversation around some of these process questions or thoughts moving forward, that would be a good time to raise those as well. Charlie?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Charlie Sperry, FWP. We may not have all the answers today in terms of kind of the next steps process-wise in our video format now, but maybe even tomorrow we revisit that. I think that you guys are onto something as far as maybe tough to get large blocks of time scheduled with everybody, but if, as Aaron was saying, if we identify a few of these tougher questions and or topics that we know are going to take some really diving in and having an in-depth discussion, that we could do a short presentation on the front end and then dedicate time just to that topic. So that seems manageable, but I guess I'm hoping that we'll have time as well with the council tomorrow, Sean, to ask that very question about next step process-wise.
Sean, I've got
absolutely.
Question just about just mechanics and technical question. On Zoom, it has a little thing about reactions down at the bottom. And I keep finding myself wanting to like thumbs up or like agree to things. If somebody says something like along those lines of the webinar, these what Charlie just said and nicely summarized. If I do a little thumbs up, would that be helpful if we were all kind of like letting you know that, oh yeah, no, I really agree with that? Is that something we can all be doing?
I think if people feel comfortable doing that, that is helpful. It does signal, not just to me, but to the rest of you, there you go, that, I can only applaud or give thumbs up. So I don't know what we do if we disagree with something, but I think that is helpful. So thanks for that. And it is nice to have these additional tools as signals, just given that there are so many of us on the line.
Thanks. I didn't even know that was a thing. I'm still learning.
Yeah, no, it is great. I know some people have a lot of expertise with these tools. And so in between calls, if people have tips like that to share, it is really helpful. I think we're all going to be in a learning mode for a while here. Brett, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, so on the thing that people can kind of jump in and talk to us about, there was or give us some recommendations or ideas on, and I thought this was actually really interesting. It's Ryan Castle actually wrote to us about the topic of hunting and kind of how they do it in Alaska, and it's respondent number 281. But I thought it was pretty informative. I actually wanted somebody maybe from FWP to kind of look at that, and I'd like to hear some thoughts back on that. It's pretty lengthy, but it's I thought it was very, very interesting.
Thanks for flagging that, Brett. Yeah, I think that's the kind of thing that would be really helpful as we transition into this next phase of synthesis across the different groups and are looking at things specifically like the role of hunting. Where is it that you guys need direction, have questions, are seeing things like that comment from the public that are providing good insight and perspective that can inform our conversation. So I think that's really helpful. Charlie, was your hand up again, or was that addressed?
I lowered it.
I saw that it was up and lowered. I just wanted to double check, so thank you. So that is another thing. If you guys haven't found the raise your hand piece of this, if your participant field is open, there's an opportunity for you to raise your hand or mute yourself there. And as you raise your hand, it bumps you to the top of that list. And so it is easy for either me or Heather to see those. And that's another way to maybe help us keep track of who'd like to talk. I really appreciate how generous you've all been in sharing the time on the video screen and on the phone this morning. So any questions before we start thinking about next steps in this afternoon. Any other questions on the group work so far?
I just have one. We're doing process tomorrow, right, Sean? This is Aaron. Sorry. As far as process
so
questions.
tomorrow. Yeah, but you could raise a question or thought now that will help inform that conversation. Where we want to leave tomorrow is with a pretty clear roadmap of how we're going to continue to advance this work.
I'm just wondering if we don't leave time, and I'd be curious what other council members think about this, and we don't have to answer this right now, but maybe if we do a smaller subject call or something like, say, on the role of hunting, it might be beneficial to allow public comment, like whether that's through questions at Dillon Fields and we take, a limited number, but to give the public that opportunity, even though we're not able to, and I don't even know technically if that can work, but if, yeah, I'm just wondering about that.
Yeah, I think we're going to try to make that work. In some ways, I think Dylan's trying to do some of that now and see if there's any real-time questions that come forward. We can, even tomorrow, we can see if we can grab some of those in real time if that's feasible. But it's a great thought, and I think we do have the technology to be able to do it. Other questions, thoughts, suggestions?
John, this is Cameron. I might have missed it. Where are we logging on, or what are we doing for this afternoon? Are we doing the same conference call or different groups? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great segue. Thanks for planting that question. So this afternoon, you'll get another email with another login for a Zoom call, and we're all going to start on the same screen. So similar to what we're doing now, Zoom does allow us to then go into different breakout rooms. And so we'll put you in your 4 different breakout room conversations and continue to advance your framework that you've been working on, informed by the conversation we've had this morning. So I think the task is really to continue to build out where you want to build out on your own, but also be responsive to some of these conversations around, are there information needs or questions that you have that you want to bring forward to the other groups? Our goal is tomorrow to share back those additional questions or that additional progress, and then start to chart our roadmap forward. So where is it that we want to really dig in and have some dedicated conversations? Is it around this question of different areas and how we define those and make sure that they're done in a way that doesn't, provide new constraints or provide new challenges to managers? Is it around the role of hunting? Probably quite a few of those, but provide that roadmap, and then also be thinking about this question that seems to be on everyone's mind, which is how do we continue to engage the public along the way? So is that through public comment portals online or not? But back to Cameron's question in particular, just be checking your inbox. It's also, I think there was a link in the council's agenda for the Zoom link for this afternoon, but I'll make sure that I send that directly to you all. Members of the public, we're not able to include you directly on Zoom, and I don't think it's going to work to live feed that one. I think it'll be even more frustrating than watching, us this morning talk about these different group conversations. But please know that we continue to want to hear from you, and we'll be integrating your comments and thoughts throughout. So to do it this afternoon, it'd be helpful if everyone could jump back on their computers or on their phone around 12:45. We'll get everyone oriented and break out into your groups by 1 o'clock. And then if you could work from 1 to 3 or whatever works best for your group, that's going to be our goal for this afternoon. That makes sense? Questions? Charlie?
Yeah, so just to be absolutely clear then, Sean, that the link to the new Zoom site, that's already in their agenda, or you're going to send that via an email to them when this morning's done?
It is in the agenda already, and I will send it as well. And just so people have a little cue in the back of your minds, the ones that we're able to live stream, like this one on YouTube, start with I believe an mt.gov in the address. The one that is for this afternoon is from the university, so it will start with umontana.zoom. So be looking for the university Zoom address for this afternoon and log on at 12:45. Questions?
Sean, does that allows us to break out into groups then? Is that?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll all start together and just have a chance to check in on tasks, and then we can break out into the groups from there. And if the question that we can then raise then as well is, do you want those of us on the support team to join your conversation or not? We can plug people in, so we'll just have that conversation with you all when we get started. So if you want to include me or Heather or any of the support team as additional resources, we're willing and able to play those roles, but it's really for you guys to continue to advance these conversations. Michelle?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Is there a way to send email questions to folks as we're talking in our small groups? So we could, if we needed some clarification, that we could send those out? Or is there a function in this video conferencing that allows that?
So this afternoon, I have it set up where you can do chat. And there's a chat box with people right within Zoom, and you can direct that to one or more individuals.
Okay.
So that will be enabled. And if not, you can always feel free to just send a regular email to that individual or to us, and we'll try to help facilitate that conversation. But I think the easiest way, if we're all in Zoom, is to try to utilize that chat box.
Great, thanks very much.
Charlie?
Yeah, just, I think we can cover a few of that, as you said, at 12:45. And if there were questions that the council members wanted to direct at a support team member, maybe we can establish a point person at 12:45 and then get those questions farmed out to the right person.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I was also going to suggest that if people want to text me, I can help. I'm kind of monitoring my text at the same time. So that's another way to get in touch. But I think we'll just try to use all these different tools that we have at our fingertips and try to stay connected and advance the conversation. Other questions before we jump off? Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this morning, members of the public for watching us online, members of the council and support team for joining via Zoom. Feel like, given the circumstances, we've really gotten off to a good start here. I know it's not the meeting that we all wanted to have and wasn't the opportunity to all reconnect in person, but I think this is working as well as it can. And in the circumstances, we're already having a great conversation around where we are and some next steps. And I look forward to reconvening with council members at 12:45. So check your inboxes for that link, and we'll see you then.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon.